Your DNA. Your DNA connects you to your ancestral home and to each and every one of your ancestors that came before you on your maternal and your paternal side. So it's kind of a big deal. And especially for us melanated people in the United States, whether you identify as an African in America, African American, Black person, or Native American, whichever you identify as, our histories have been erased intentionally, scrambled, thrown away, burned, to purposely try to disconnect us from our roots. You have to wonder why. That's like a giant question mark that nobody wants to talk about, but they should. So, DNA. It's one of those things that I think right now is way more important than any other time in our history. Because I'm seeing little things that are happening around the world. The only thing could probably start to clear those incidents up would be DNA testing. Because people are taking claims on things that aren't theirs. And I can understand the mix up in certain instances, but either way, it's dangerous not to know who you are. And for instance, South Africa is one of those things that was on my mind. It's grabbed a piece of my heart. I've always had the desire to move desire to move to the continent, take my DNA back to the continent of Africa since I was probably 13, 14 years old. And for some reason, Ghana always called out to me. I don't know why, but I always had my heart set on Ghana. And I still do partially have my heart set on Ghana. But I always knew I wanted to live in multiple places and I wanted to be able to do things and help develop and contribute to more than one place. And then I just recently, but the past 3-4 years started studying South Africa a lot, the cradle of civilization. So it's definitely going to be a landing spot for me. But the thing that I've noticed about there is it's the only melting pot area like that in the sense that it is in Africa, where you have the natives, which are Africans. You have the coloreds, which is a group of people basically that are what you would consider over here mixed race, sort of like mulatto, but just mixed with different things. Indian, I believe, the Middle Eastern slave trade that was going on brought some some Arab slaves over that way. So it was a mixture of people. Then you have a small portion of white people who seem to be they're the smallest portion, but it seems for some reason to be the most boisterous and demanding out of everybody down there. And then, you have, a large population of Indian people, which I know a couple of Indians from South Africa, beautiful people. But I saw a clip a couple of weeks ago of a white guy proclaiming that, the Western Cape should be theirs, and, they want to patronize white businesses and want it to be a white area. And I'm like, well, y'all do too much all over the planet, but you don't get to go to Africa and claim land to be yours. Because here's the thing that's trippy about it. Like when their people came over there and started stealing land 300-400 years ago, people have been living in Africa for millions of years. So nothing is yours. No area in Africa on the continent should be whites only. And there is one. There's a small town in South Africa. It begins with I don't remember the name of it, but it seems like redneck capital of Africa, and why you shouldn't even have that there, period. I'm a true believer in by any means necessary. So some of these things, the government's not going to fix them. The people have to fix them, but that's another story. But the reason I said that is because a lot of that could be cleared up. Simple DNA testing. You claim this is your land. Let's do a DNA test. Let's see where your ancestral land is actually at. Because I can almost guarantee you it won't be on the African continent. I have a couple of white friends and a couple of white people that I know that have done DNA testing, and they've all come out with the same results pretty much. They're either 98 to 100% European. That's it. There's no African. There's no South African, West African, Rhodesia, Botswana, it's nothing. It's European, which means ancestrally, no land on the continent of Africa belongs to you and your family. Should be gracious and grateful to be there and not making demands of what you, what you think should be yours and yours only. It's a good thing I'm not in politics. Um, but for me, my DNA, the reason for my testing was different. I always wanted to know exactly, even though I had this burning love for Ghana since I was a kid, I always wanted to know exactly where my roots were from. So, fast forward to age 40 or something, 40 or so. I have a cousin that used to work doing DNA analytics and stuff like that. So he reached out to me and decided, hey, cousin, let me do your DNA test for you. I was like, cool, because I told him I wanted to find out where I was from. I wanted to be able to put my DNA to a specific area in Africa. And so he started the process. And once we got started going in the process, he told me, okay, here's the information I have. Which was a lot. It was a lot. It was a shocker because the way I grew up, it was my mother, guy that she married, who was my father figure up to like age 10. And then me and my brother. So that was all I knew was family, direct family. But at age 10, my mother told me the truth because she didn't want me to be scarred by it or hold it against her. She told me that, the guy that I had been knowing as my father figure was not my actual father. And it didn't even really, it bothered me for a moment, but I didn't really dwell on it. I didn't think about it much. Up until that time, up until, maybe a year later. Because then he started to act different. And that's when the little things started to show. So I realized, okay, she's right. And she gave me a picture of the guy who, was supposed to be my biological father. So when I do this DNA test, I find out who my biological father is. Before my cousin told me, he asked, did I want him to do that? Do you want to know who your father is? And I was like, not really. I wasn't at this point, 40 some years old, I hadn't really thought about it. Like at this point, I raised myself as a man since 14, so it just, I don't know. I didn't have bad feelings about it, but it wasn't my desire. But he said, we can't really find out exactly who you are 100% without knowing who your father is. So I was like, okay, that makes sense. I don't fight much against science because you can, if you can prove it, that makes sense. You only getting half of the story if you only have, me and my mother's DNA. So he found my father. Then he told me that he found my sister. And I was like, what? He was like, well, yeah, because the way it works is a connection by numbers. So it was kind of like the amount of numbers that we matched up. She had to be either a sister or auntie. And he said she was too young to be my auntie. So I got a little excited. I was like, wow, I always wanted a sister. So now I found out I have this little sister that's in the military, or was in the military, and living a good life. Has 3 beautiful daughters, a beautiful son that she just had. I was excited. And then found out who my father was. So I also found out I had other siblings. So I ended up all together having, two more brothers and 3 more sisters, which was great. For someone who, because it was just me and my brother. We were 3.5, almost 4 years apart. So there were times when we were growing up and we were really close because we moved around a lot, it was a military family. But most of the time we weren't because of the age gap. He was always a kid to me. So until he became an adult, basically, So we didn't kick it and hang out that much like that. We played a little bit together, but it was more so when we were in the house, then, he had his friends, I had my friends, But it was good to find out that I had other siblings, because that just added to the amount of people that I'm able to share that super close bond with. And it all happened because of this DNA testing. And that was a part of what like I said, that was the biggest part to me of what I found out is I had these siblings out here that I knew nothing about all these years. One of them living in the same city as me. And I guess he's a known person there. because of our fields, we wouldn't know each other, but it's just wild things that you find out when you do a DNA test. You could be living next to family and don't even know it. Because a lot of times we just accept the stories that are passed down. That was part two of why I did the DNA test. It was all kind of part of part one because I wanted to know where I was from, but it was also to show my mother we weren't Native American. Because all my life, that's what she told me. She was like, "You're more Native American than you are African." And in her defense, this was what was told to her. It was passed down, family generations. Because understandingly, everybody who was black in America was treated badly. So they didn't necessarily want to be looked at as black. If they could pass for something else, they did. Not the approach I would have taken if I was there, but I understood why they did it. But then we actually do have a lot of Native American family. We have, Native American in our blood. Prominent Native American people. On my father's side, my sixth great grandfather was one of the founding fathers of Lumberton, North Carolina, where Afeni Shakur is from. Rest in peace to the Queen. And that's something I found out through this DNA testing. I found out that I'm a direct descendant of Ramses III, one of the greatest Egyptian pharaohs to live. That's found out that my mother's DNA is ancient, going back to the hunter gatherers, of Southeast Africa. So all of that information I found out through a simple DNA test. And then when it came to what I really wanted to know, where I'm from, I was able to find out a lot about myself because I had this concept. I want to know if I'm from Ghana, from Nigeria, Gabon, if I'm from Congo, DR Congo, if I'm from Kenya, I was curious, like, where am I from? So through this DNA test, you find out that if you're black and you're in the United States, it's a good chance you're a mixture of things. You're not going to be from one area. Mainly because Africans they navigated, they moved, they were nomads. So when I did my DNA test, it came up that I was 80.7% West African, which I was proud of. I was extremely proud of. But that's broke down into sections, with the largest portion basically being Nigeria. So shout out to Nigeria. That's the official homeland. But like Ghana and Liberia and Senegal were also very big percentages of where my DNA traced back to. So I found that to be fascinating. There was a small percentage of European, and then there was a percentage of Native American. Well, I say small percentage. It was the Native American and then the European was around the same. It looked like if you just look at it broadly in the numbers, like 10 or 11%, something like that. But and a little bit of Guyana in the South American region. So it was dope to get all this information because I wish I would have got it early. I had siblings out here all this time that I had no idea were out there. And I'm the oldest out of all of them. So, I wish that I would have thought about this earlier. So don't be afraid to go and get that DNA test. Also, it can clear up a lot of things like the situation in South Africa. I think that if people are claiming that it's their land and there's an argument that it's not their land, do a DNA test. Find out where your ancestors are from. Because if your ancestry says you're 98 point something percent European, then nothing on the continent of Africa is your family's land. It was stolen. Simple and plain. Be humble. And on that note, soldier salute. So, if you're interested in getting your DNA testing done, you can go to AfricanAncestry.com, Heritage.com, 23andMe.com, or Ancestry.com. Get your DNA testing. It's real simple. Find out where you're from and who your family is. It's dope.